So here we are in the bee yard. It's a Monday morning, about 10:30, quarter 11. It's kind of still cool. It's probably in the mid-50s. And this is the first time to this out yard, and we're out in Pittsboro, Indiana. This is my furthest out yard, and you can see the hives as they were set up for winter, and they're all insulated. We're in the process of taking the insulation off now. We're supposed to have some really nice days for the next several weeks with some rain, typical April weather. As you can see, these hives all have a added feeder spacer on the top with a little notch in the middle of the front there where the bees come and go, which they generally use more in the spring and in the winter for cleansing flights. Have not been to this bee yard since I closed them up in the fall. I had two other bee yards, one at home with 5 hives and another one about 10 miles from home, and all those bees died. 3 of those hives were either late swarms or one that I had acquired previously from another area. Didn't expect them to make it because they were kind of small. Even feeding didn't save them. We had a very cold winter, 60 inches of snow, and temperatures 20 below, and stayed there for a long time. And bees didn't have up to like 2 months, 60 days where they couldn't take cleansing flights, sometimes even more than that, so not surprising. But here's 2 covers that blew off, but since the bees propolized these tops here, and I also taped them against draft when I initially put them on because it was late fall, in case they didn't get a chance to propolize very well, the top stayed on, which is something for you to remember if you don't think about it. So now my darling wife Mary Ann is taking the insulation styrofoam off. This is something we've done for the last 2 or 3 years, and it seems to work. And another note about the hives that didn't survive is half of those hives had still honey in them, so it wasn't a matter of starving to death, more of a matter of extreme cold, and the bees couldn't move the cluster to get to the honey. Not an uncommon issue. It doesn't appear to be any kind of a disease issue. So we're going to be taking off the mouse guards and stripping some of the empty supers off of these quickly because of the cold, so we don't chill the brood, and then button them down with some extra patty and some syrup, and that'll take care of the feed. We have basswood and different trees like that around here, as you can see, and they'll probably not be too long before they'll be popping out, probably another 2 to 3 weeks, and that might give us an early flow to kind of help build things up. It's about the time here in Indiana for the pussy willow and the real light pollens that come from trees. No floral sources like good old dandelion yet. So that's what we're up to. I'll check back in a little later. Okay, what you're looking at is the first hive in these 5 hives. This is the first hive I've torn down. Cleaned up all the tops. These are all basically empty. This is the topmost super. There's maybe just a tad of honey in it left. And if you notice, I'll get up close here, you can see the bees in the spaces here. They're all dead. That was the final cluster. And here's what's on the bottom board, which is a vented screen top bottom board that has an oil pan that normally sits under that screening in the summertime, and that's to catch the mites and the beetles. So this first hive most likely died, not totally, but died of a combination of cold and starvation. As you can see, it's made up of 4 shallows, and this was a very strong hive, and that also gave us honey in the summer. So that's the situation on the first hive. Just a quick lesson for the newbie or new beekeeper, you see two hive tools in front of you. There's many different designs, but these are the two most common. One looks kind of like a paint scraper, which is the one that's red here. The other one is just flat all over. The big advantage of it, when you're working your hives and looking at frames and checking brood and that sort of stuff, if you're going to actually move the frame, you notice the hook on this? Watch where it actually goes. And you see where this is? Here's where most of us beekeepers use this tool right here. We use it here. We end up knocking off pieces of wood and messing up the frames. Don't look this way is, and they're always kind of loaded with propolis, stuck down pretty good. But see, this goes in the slot. Can you see where that is? The slot right there. You push it down, and then you just, there's a notch back here in the back of this tool, right there. It sits on the top of the frame, and then you just pull it backwards in the fulcrum. You just see how that pops those frames up just so beautifully? I'll do that over here on this other side, so you can see it again. You put it in the hole right there at the end. Pop it up. Push this one back down. Of course, it's cold out here, so the propolis is kind of show you again real close. See where it is right there? Bend the tool so you can see it. And this is the topmost super. I'm going to pull these out, and now you know what it looks like when you have a bunch of dead bees that died primarily of cold and starvation. I'll draw it back here so you can see it. And the longer they've been in the hive, the whiter they can get on the surface, because they get kind of moldy. Because bees do have body fluid, obviously, okay? So what you say, well, what do you do with these? Well, I'll show you what I do here in a minute. You take your hive tool, I'm going to show you, and you're going to have this vertical, but I just do this. You're going to take the surface off of these bees that are on the comb off gently. You don't want to. This is cold comb, and it can fracture quite easily. You do the same on the other side. Well, this comb was drawn out, I think, last year. Okay, and as you can see, it was used for honey as well as brood. As you can see, the darker area ring where the brood were. Now what you see is a bunch of dead bees. In the last throes of their life, they crawl head first into the cells and pack the cells. So then how do you get those out? Well, you turn your frame like that, so the bees are pointing down toward the ground, and then you use your hive tool and you bang it gently on the wood part of the frame, not anywhere near the wax. And it's a moderate bang, not too hard, because it's cold and you can just knock the wax right out of there. And most of those bees will just pop out of there. Now you could just leave it and the bees would clean up, but remember, that's a lot of extra work. It takes a lot of extra energy and stores, whether spring or fall. So bottom line is, to try to help them out as much you can. Commercial beekeepers probably don't have the time, they don't even mess with it. So, but us hobbyists, and I've been at it for quite a few years, you try to help them out as much as you can. There's nothing better to do today anyways, and it's a great day, so why not? So that's what just thought to give you a little heads up if you're new and don't know what to do, and you come across this situation, there's an easy way to do it. Okay, so the pile of supers is stacking up. I talked about the first hive. This is the second hive you see over here that's down now, and this is just a lighting board. This hive was also dead. The cluster, as you'd expect, is at the top. Interestingly enough, this hive had honey in it, but it's not sufficient to say that it has honey or that it even has capped honey. What you need to really do is take a close look at the frame, and what you see sometimes is that the honey is not honey per se, it is granulated or crystallized. that was the case here. There's two frames of crystallized or granulated honey right next to the cluster. It's not gonna. There's two issues here. One is that if it's cold enough, they won't fly, obviously, and they won't take cleansing flights. And this was a bad year for that. Low temperatures, long time. The other issue is when you have crystallized honey, bees are going to need a little source of water to help with the issue of bringing that back so that they can consume it. So it's a real disadvantage. So how do you get crystallized honey? Well, some honey has a tendency to do that even in the summertime. Temperatures get around 60, 63 degrees or so. That happens naturally to a lot of honeys. It's about the ratio of fructose to sucrose, and the higher the ratio of the two in the wrong direction, the more probable it's going to be that it will crystallize. Then you get into some special honeys like heather that really don't ever crystallize. They form a colloid, and they kind of form like a gel in the cell, and they have to actually be stirred with special extracting equipment. Each cell with a little tiny like spring-like stir. It's twisted in the cell at high RPMs, and it liquefies when it's in motion, of course, and then it's extracted in an extractor. You could press extract it, I suppose, but you probably wouldn't get nearly as much out. And then, of course, when it's filtered and poured into a jar, it sets up again just like a jelly. So that is the exception. One little point on hive tools that it's nice to kind of point out, especially newbies. You see the curve on this thing? A lot of times we try to take some of the excess propolis off the ends of the frames here that you see I'm pointing to, and sometimes a little off of here. Kind of clean them up and get the burr comb and stuff off. It is a lot easier to actually get ahead of whatever you're trying to do with the curved part. See the curved part here? And actually pull it. It takes less effort, and the other thing is, if you're going with the grain of the wood and you don't really realize it, you can actually gouge into the wood quite easily. But just, it comes off. It's just kind of like a plane. You leave enough there for the bees to use to stick things back together again. But you notice how I kind of cleaned that up, and I got rid of all the cluster of bees. And I'll raise this up. Well, there's your bees that came out of this thing. Then you can also look at the bottom here, and you can just grab it like that. Just pull it off, the excess comb that sticks down, kind of clean it up a bit. And that's basically how I leave a super. You notice down here on the edge too, you got a lot of extra stuff. I take some of that off, not all of it. Just go down like that. Clean it up as you go. I'm going to show you another little trick that I just discovered this year, because I got tired of dealing with it in my many previous years, and that is when you work in the cool, particularly with a veil on, you have a runny nose and no way to get to it. So I'll turn this camera around and let you see what the solution is. Hopefully I've caught the image with the camera. I'm just kind of aiming the lens at it so I make sure I get it. But you see that piece of Scott towel in there? I just bring it up, wipe my nose, and let it drop back, and that kind of takes care of it. It doesn't drip all over the place and drive you crazy while you're trying to work. So no, back to finish up the job and get this bee yard in shape for some more bees and that sort of thing. So I'll catch you in a bit. Okay, so we've got the two hives that were dead broken down, and we've got everything stacked and piled in the back of the pickup, and got some things hanging over, run up a load last. We've got some pollen patties here. We've got a bucket of syrup that we may or may not use, and we have some bags of honey. This is straight honey from last year. Some of that's actually basswood, that sort of thing. Now we've got the last 3 to go here. And these last 3 hives have the screen bottom board with the oil pen underneath. And if you don't know what that is, then you can look it up on my YouTube movie under G. That's GWOOSTER or GMWOOSTER. Those are where all my videos are. And it's actually a pan that sits in the bottom board with a screen that's fixed over the top of it. The beetles and the varroa, when they're chased around and moved around, they fall through the hardware cloth, which is too small for bees to go through, and they end up in the oil and die, which is good. So I don't really have a problem with beetles or varroa per se, that I've been aware of anyways. Just long cold winters, and this was the winter of record for the last 30 years, I think they said, and I believe it. So I'm going to give this camera to my wife, and I'm going to open this hive up and take a look-see. I can tell it's active because I've got a few little buggers crawling around inside here in this little opening at the top. I don't expect much in the bottom 3 boxes here.
Did you want me to take that?
Here, you take this and you start pointing it in the direction of the beekeeper.
Is it still on?
It's still on. It should have a red circle on it. Do you see the red circle?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you look at it? Keep the camera where it needs to go. Here you go. And actually, you could probably work these bees today without a veil, but in case I didn't say it before, I'll say it now. It's cold out here. It's in the low 50s, if that. And we got some bees flying around now. They weren't doing that when we came. We put these extra feeder covers on late in the fall, and I see these pouring out in front here a little bit, so I'm going to give them a little smoke just to let them know that I'm here. I don't want too many coming out because if they get chilled, they might actually die before they get back, so not a good thing. Let's just see. Bring the camera closer so we can take a look inside. Oh yeah, see? We got bees. But what we probably don't have is food. So we're going to give them some right now. We'll just keep the camera there. Now this is a bunch of honey here. And you can set those right up on there. They'll move out of the way as you do it. And I'm going to put another pollen patty over here. And then I'm going to take a sharp blade and open up that honey so that you can. point at this. Now, some people, your patties usually come with a piece of paper on either side, weather permitting, and it's not too cold out. I usually try to take the bottom half of the paper off, because any work you could save them getting to this stuff to eat is beneficial, particularly in the spring, since the cluster is small, or can be small. Come around this way, babe. So I put one on the far side. This is hinged. Come around the other way. I won't be able to show you because I forgot it was hinged with that tape. We'll put it down here gently. And we'll lay it down slowly so you don't crush them. They'll move. They're more interested in what you've got than you, and if you get a little sting, hey, that's beekeeping. I don't like to get stung in the face for obvious reasons. It kind of hurts a little bit more. Face is pretty vascular. They will. That bit of honey that I just gave them will be like a spurt of health that you won't believe. And that we're going to put a cover on.
It's right here. It's right here.
Okay. You notice I have knocked down the other hives, but I have not gone beyond that on this hive. And you say, well, why aren't you doing that? It's not important to know what's below right now. You could assume if you got an active cluster up top and there doesn't appear to be any honey in the frames that are up there, or very little, that why bother looking at everything below if it's empty or devoid of anything that they need. So you can do that safer when it's warmer, and that's important because you remember you've got a queen up there, and she's not going to be laying much if everything gets chilly. So you got to keep things going by not opening it up the hive too much for very long when it's cold. So now we're going to move to this hive here, Marianne. Some of the stuff out that we're probably not going to need. So, show up here. I've got another, turn your camera, look through it so you can see what you're looking at. There's a bag, another bag. This is like a 2-quart bag, Ziploc, and you fill it with whatever you want. Sugar water, usually this time of spring, 2 to 1 or 1 to 1. Then I got some pollen patties here. And I'll try and put as many of these on here that I can. I'm not going to break down the hive today. I had other ideas that maybe if it got warmer, we would put down here, move some stuff around, and in one of these deeps put some a tank. But it's too soon for that, and it's too cold. So I'm going to give them the pollen patties and some of this honey.
Do we want to seal up this hole here?
No, just leave it like it is. So these bees are out flying a little bit now since they've been bothered. I don't know what's in this one. I did see some signs of life, but we're going to take a gander and see. I know this hive right here, this hive is got bees too. So 3 out of 5 survived, and my other 9 hives, 1 in one yard, 5 in one yard, and 4 in another, they both died. All died. Both those yards. I have 7 packages coming, and I have some possibilities of getting some brood from some other beekeepers later to boost these colonies once we get rolling here. It's going to be this is going to be a building year. So now we're going to open this one just like we did the other. I do expect to see some bees in here, but who knows, maybe not. Now there's bees in here for sure. Oh gosh, yes. That's a nice hive. One could argue, well, this is so high, so full of bees, why don't we just go ahead and work them? Well, I don't think so. It's still too cold. I'll wait another week or so, but I am going to feed them, and quickly. You keep the camera lens on this. I just take this here and kind of just...
Why don't you put it over there where they're not?
Lay it down gently, okay, like so, and then you just kind of let it creep over the bees and kind of, you can blow on them. There, see, you laid it down. You got to move it in so that lid will close.
Hurry up.
Just leave it up, just let it drop. And I'm going to take a couple of these.
It's going to fall. I can't hold the
just
camera.
Let it go,
in that.
let it go, let it go. Just let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Okay, I'm going to take the bottom off of this, if you can. One less thing for them to gnaw through, okay? You don't have to get it all off, but get most of it off. Then just lay it down gently. Like this. See, like that. Okay? If you get stung doing this, big deal. Just look at it this way. Look at it as a... as your inoculation for the year. And then some. You got more to go, of course. Now, you can't probably hear this, but the bees have already discovered this, and guess what? They're not even interested in me. They're interested in what I'm giving them. The whole tone in the hive is changing as we speak. So we could have chopped this up. Oh yeah, that'll make them happy. Go back closed. So we can protect them from the cold. This is going to be a good hive. This hive will make 2 hives. Probably in another 3 weeks. So, that'll take up one of my losses. Okay, now we're going to go to the big one here.
You got to put that lid on it.
We'll put a lid on this when we get done with the other one. It's not important right now. Okay, we will move the pollen back, and I do not have a bag with honey and or sugar or syrup, but what I do have is I have a tank. And you notice, just by luck, this hive happens to have, guess what on top? It has what I think it is called, I'm not sure that I have one that's kind of deep, but it is called an Illini or Illinois super, and they are actually a little bit larger than a medium super. So you have a shallow, medium, and Illinois. That's the next largest, and the largest we commonly refer to, which is I think what we have here. I'm pretty sure it is. It's called a deep or a brood chamber, because a lot of people start their hives out with at least one of these. And that's where the queen raises her brood.
Why don't we put one on top?
I'm just cutting the tape loose here just in case, because it's still propolized, but just in case I have to pop this super here for whatever reason. I'll leave one side hinged like I did before with the tape. And you say, why is there tape on there? Well, I put these on in the fall. Some of them didn't have that much propolis in the gap, so I gave them a chance with the weather and all, rain and wind, just to keep it from blowing off, as actually the original cover did on this. So, this hive, I'll show you, I can push this hive with my hand, which is another thing to remember. You don't always have to go through every box to tell whether there's food in there. After you've been at it for a while, all you have to do is lift the hive up. Not the whole hive, just get an idea. After you do this a few times, you'll know. Each one of these supers in and of itself, without anything in it, with comb, drawn comb, probably weighs 20-25 pounds each. Okay, so that means if they're full of 60 pounds of honey, you're going to be lifting sort of right around 80-85 pounds. I've lifted ones that weighed over 100 pounds. Now you can see in here, what we've got is very little honey, we have active bees in this hive that are kind of spread out on the comb, which means the temperature is comfortable for them, but they're flying looking for scarce pollen and very little nectar at this time. So what we really need to do is feed them big time. So they will get, on this one I have to take the cover off and give them some smoke, and I'm going to have to take sometimes you have to push the material that you use for your smoker down when it does not get into the remaining embers, so you can have a little bit more smoke. I cleaned them off the top there. Hang on a minute. Stay there. Now, my wife can take a shot down there and show you what that tank looks like. And here's the syrup. And I got to go back to the truck to get the funnel. Take a look over here, babe. Your funnel can be just cut off milk pail. You use the top, and then this fits down in here, and you just pour your syrup in. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to fill this tank with syrup. It holds about a gallon, and we're going to put it on the far side over here. And just to make sure that, I got to get that other. I always have a tendency to leave this hive tool where I shouldn't, because I don't use it that often, but I use it just for this reason. It's marvelous with this hook to break loose the supers without trying to break the frame up, and you can take it out real quick. Now all I need to do is move this one over just a little. Make sure we can get it out of the way, because this tank is going to have to fit in here. I'm going to have to make sure that it does. And the syrup is 1-to-1 here that I use. And the easiest way to do this is just put this in there like that. I grab this like that, and just go ahead and fill it. Like I say, this holds a gallon, and I always put a drop or two of spearmint. You can use peppermint, you can use, well, just about any flavor, including vanilla. It just, and you don't use much. I mean, just a little bit, okay? And this has a woven material that goes down in the hole, you see. So the bees just walk on that and feed and draw the level out as they go down. So I will come back if the weather's as warm as I think it's going to be, and they will have this empty in about a week, probably. I leave a little headroom at the top. That's so when you move it around, you don't splash it all over the place. And you'll put this in here, right like that. And it's just at the top now. We got fortunate. I could sneak it in there. And there's a gap over here, you see, where I had to take 2 frames out because this feeder is actually bigger than 1 frame, so you can't squeeze it in there, and there's no sense in doing that. And
we'll scoot it over a little.
And what you try to do then is, rather than put your regular inside cover on, which wouldn't work because then they wouldn't have space to come up from here and get into the hole, you want to put your what I call your expander, which is this, okay, that you put that back on. But before we do that, what do we have to do? We have to give them the other component of their feed, which at this time is, of course, pollen patties or substitute pollen, because very little of it is available. So again, we do what we did before.
Can we scoot this syrup feeder over a little bit so there's more room between the frame?
No, they don't work that way. They go in at the top.
No, I'm talking about the frame next to it.
It doesn't matter. They go at the top. It's going to crawl up the top and down the bottom, down through the holes. Here's a gap here that's natural there anyways, so that doesn't really, and this fits in a, we'll give them a little, but not much. Okay.
That's what I was
Okay,
saying.
now, my wife is my great helper in the bee yard, and if you have one and she's even remotely curious, it's not a bad idea to put a bee suit on her, even buy one. She's going to be enthralled if she has any curiosity in her. She's going to really be impressed. The only thing you want to do is try to keep the bee stings at a minimum for the ladies, because it takes a while for them to get used to that. If they have any allergies or predisposition to that issue, you might not want to do that at all. Anaphylactic shock is not something that you want to fool around with. It's not something that you necessarily have a lot of time with either. True anaphylactic shock gives you about 3 to 5 minutes to react. And because the airways are swollen and closed, there is no way to oxygenate the individual. Unless you carry epinephrine, adrenaline, or solumedrol, or Benadryl. Solumedrol is good, epinephrine is good for bee stings that involve severe allergic reactions. Benadryl is very slow acting. It helps with swelling with people that are sensitive but not allergic, okay? It's kind of makes things nicer. Since this hive is a little spare and I've got the pollen patties, I'm going to put one more on top of there. Right next to me here on my left, there are a stand of basswood trees, and 2 years ago when we had an early spring, which we don't look like we're going to have this year, it was in the 80s in March and not too bad in April, we had a flow of basswood, and there's about, I think I counted about 16 basswood trees, and the interesting thing about basswood is it's a really pretty kind of a light amber honey, but it's one of the only honeys I know of that has a natural mint, light mint flavor aftertaste. A really fabulous honey. And I have, to my recollection, that was the only year I've collected. I had a little bit last year, not much, maybe 1 30-pound super. So now we've got all the pollen patties and the syrup on them. You don't have to come back for at least a week to these 3 hives. Now, 2 of these hives that have this extension on them at the top, what I call a feeder extension that I made, and it's insulated, by the way, so they're protected from the cold at the top. It's also vented because it has an access here in the front. It has a hole. So this cover, when we came, was blown off. This is an outside, typical outside overlapping cover. Okay, so I'm going to put that back on. And you notice this one doesn't have the cover on, so these 2 hives, that cover had actually blown off. So what we're going to do, make sure we knock off all the crap so it doesn't get in the hive. I'm going to move this stuff over that we're done using. And we'll put the cover back on this and hope that the winds that come along with the April showers aren't going to be that strong they'll blow it off again. But the nice thing about it is that you still have this expanded area above where you're going to find most of your bees in the spring, because they're looking for anything to eat, particularly if it's very sparse inside. So you're looking at the 3 hives that survived out of 3 bee yards for a total of 14 hives. So I had 4 in one bee yard at home. I had 5 in another 2 or 3 miles from home. Those all died, and 2 here died. That is my worst bee kill since I started beekeeping, which was I was about 27 or so, and I'm now 71, so you can do the math. These are the 2 frames that I took out of the Jeep just now when I put the pollen and the honey up there. And as you can see, the bees are flying out now, and they are all excited about these 2 frames, which I'm not going to leave for them because I want them to concentrate on what's in the hive. So now it's interesting to note that what I'm seeing now is bees flying out of all the hives now, and they're really excited about what they've been given. Now it's interesting to note, if you don't already know this as a beekeeper, or if you're a newbie, you need to learn that early springtime, when the temperature is not adequate for flight, it's warming up now and it's getting better. You want to keep the exposure to the hive at a minimum. It's about 55. That's plenty warm enough for bees to fly, but it's not warm enough for brood. The overall brood temperature should be right around 93 to 95 degrees, depending upon the situation. 93 is probably pretty much standard, 93.5, something like that. It's a little bit cooler than our body temperature by about 5 degrees, but bees can bring their body temperatures up on a spurt to something like 103 degrees, and maybe 105 if they need to do it for emergency sake. So, that being said, one of the questions you might ask is, why do you have so many boxes on your hives in the winter? Well, at one time I had a lot more hives going than this, and I didn't have to worry about where to put the boxes. Well, I have 3 stacks of supers in the garage, and I have about 20 on the back deck because of all the hives I had to break down, and of course you can see those on the pickup truck from the 2, so I'll have more to join those. But I've got 3 hives here, which will probably split and start out as nooks, and I'm going to try a new process this year. There's an article on YouTube that I used to do years ago, but he reminded me. This is a guy from up around the northern New York area next to Canada, and I think it's under the heading of a self-sustainable apiary, and this guy is sharp. He has not had to buy bees since 1990 something, okay, and he never buys bees. He actually sells his excess, not just the bees but also the nooks and that sort of thing, and queens, because he raises his own queens. So what I'm going to do when I get this set, I'm going to stick with about 15 hives, which is where I was headed for. But I will compress these hives and take these boxes down And part of these boxes will become a new hive / nook, because you can take a deep brood chamber, put a divider board in the center, and you can make 2 nooks out of it. And then you can actually put a queen excluder on the top of that, and you can actually let the workers come up through that queen excluder and work both of the workers from either nook, if you will, made out of one brood body on the bottom, come up through the queen excluder and work that full depth brood body or whatever is above the queen excluder. And then you have the power of the queen being able to lay as all those workers are out of her way and get up into the boxes and nurse bees and all that stuff. See, so you've got you have the potential to raise population quicker. Then you have to worry, of course, about queen cells later on and that sort of thing, swarming, and that's coming up. Of course, this of course is April. So you got to keep a close eye on your hives. And April is the supreme month of swarms. The only problem with outyards is that you're not there generally when they swarm, but you sure see the evidence when they're gone. So you raise the box above, kind of look underneath, see whether you have any swarms. So you can generally tell they're going to swarm. Your bees are usually packed in the box and they're looking to do something to get rid of the issue. So enough said. It's all about how you have to do beekeeping for whatever reason, but you have to modify it with some common sense. And look up that guy that I mentioned, the self-sustainable apiary. He's going to give you some really great tips if you don't have much knowledge about bees, and if you do, and I've been at it for a long time, I'm telling you, he knows what he's talking about, and he's very good at what he does. So, enough said. I'll put this up on YouTube as one movie, all put together, and you can watch it all together. This is G. Wooster signing off. Well, now all the bees are buzzing around, and you can see that my hives are not compressed. That's because I don't have enough room to put all those boxes in my garage, because I already have too many there now from former hives that I had that I don't have anymore and don't wish to have, because I need to keep the limit somewhere around 15 or so. So now I have 3 hives, 7 more packages coming. That'll give me 10. Splits off of these 3 here, we'll raise it another 3, so we'll be almost back to population. But this is going to be a building year. It was a horrible winter, worst in 30 years. So you do what you have to do to make it work. There's a guy on the web that's name is, I can't remember his name, but it's under the heading of the self-sustainable apiary, and he is really a smart fellow, and some of the stuff that he's done I've practiced over the years, but you know how when it's been so many years you forget what you did in the past. Well, he's reminded me, and I'm going to go back to that, raising a nook along with your main hive, and that is your insurance plan through the winter. If one of the 2 doesn't make it, you've always got, you know, one to back up or hold the numbers steady. And if they both make it through, then you can make splits off of either one of them. So it's a great plan. But that's just a taste of some of the stuff he talks about. And just to show you, these bottom boards are screen bottom boards, and they have a tray under there, and that tray generally holds oil. I don't put the oil in yet, and the oil is what the mites and the beetles suffocate in and die, and they work excellent. Again, on my YouTube videos, it's under G, that's G as in Guy, and W-O-O-S-T-E-R, Wooster. That's W-O-O-S-T-E-R, so the full search name is G. Wooster, together, all in one word, G-W-O-O-S-T-E-R. And I can show you how I actually built them, and how, it's about a 6-stage process, movie-wise. When I started doing movies, that's how I did it, but now I put it all into one movie so you can watch it easier without having to find the next episode. So things look pretty good here. We've fed them all, and they should be very happy for at least a week, and by that time I'm sure that these trees will be issuing some of the first pollen, and we should be out of the slump. About that time my other bees will be here, and we'll be starting 7 new hives, and they won't all be here. In fact, these hives here are going to be moved to another yard, maybe a mile or so down the street, where I can have better access. Another issue you want to remember, this is woods, and it acts as a barrier temperature wise and wind wise. But one of the things I don't like about it is I don't like where I put them. If I had to do it over, I'd put them out, way out further. I'd say another 50 feet out here, where the hive itself is actually in the sun. I think that works better. So just another thought for you to think about. So much for that. My wife is finishing up the loading, and I'm going to go help her, and that's as much as I'm going to do. This is G. Wooster signing off. So, one final look at the bees before we take off. You might be asking, what in the world are these things right here? This is like a little awning over the front, because these bottom boards here that have an oil pan underneath, if the rain comes directly down, it can leak back into the oil. So this just kind of sheds the water off the front. So now we have a lot more activity. The temperature is probably pushing 60 degrees now. But we're still in the shadows here, in the shade, which I mentioned before that I don't like. So now you can see a lot more activity. And I'm, of course, standing in front of the hive, which is a no-no. So I'm in the bee path, but I sometimes do that on purpose to see how many times I get bumped into from the back, because then that gives me an idea that I actually have bees that are flying in, as opposed to just doing orientation flights or cleansing flights. Kind of important this time of year to at least know that they might be looking for something. It'll be better tomorrow, and I think the end of the week it's supposed to be around 70. So take you over here and see the old beekeeper's truck. There you go. And there's the beekeeper's wife. And she's got her hoodie up and tied inside of her veil. And she's about to make a change that she thinks is necessary. She always worries about the covers coming off, particularly when they're not really propolized, because we have those expansion covers for feeding on the top of each of those 3 hives. And it's a good point. It's going to be pretty hard to knock all 3 off, or 2 off. All 3 of those hives are light, meaning basically they were at the end of their stores, so it was a good time to get here. Maybe if we had been here a month earlier, but I doubt that there would have been much there. We've just had a horrendous winter, really awful winter, and that many hives, 11 hives dead. Well, 10 hives dead. Says something. That's a first for me. But we'll try to make it better. Signing off, G. Wooster.